Mo, as you went through the off season and considered what a bat could do to kind of not just lengthen the lineup, but alter the look of the lineup, how do you see Ozuna fitting into that mold as far as not just an all-star hitter, but maybe transformative hitter?
Yeah, I think that the latter part of that is really what we were trying to key in on, is someone that we could inject into our lineup that might change how other people perform. And if you think about last season, we got out of the gates a little bit slow, we stumbled. Clearly there was a lot of pressure put on Dexter Fowler, a lot of pressure put on Matt Carpenter, and it just never gelled. And then all of a sudden, we had the younger hitters like the Grichiks, Piscottis of the world trying to probably do more than they had to, let alone some off-the-field issues that became a distraction for them. And so ultimately what we tried to do was identify someone that we could stick in that 3 or 4 hole and really try to optimize what we have. And then when you take a look back at last year, we had someone emerge as that type of hitter, and that's Tommy Pham. And so you can't go to the season with just one type of hitter like that. You really need more than that. And when you look at what it does to our lineup and how much deeper it makes us, obviously you can imagine now somebody like Paul DeYoung hitting 5th, 6th, all of a sudden that lineup goes from something that opposing teams felt they could pitch around to maybe complicating things for them.
I was interested in looking at the 3 Marlins outfielders that were traded this offseason and how they were at really different stages of their career in a lot of ways. Maybe their contracts represented that, is that Stanton is an established slugger, a guy who, is the face of the franchise type. And Yelich is signed for longer than the other two, but is sort of a hitter coming into his own. Where did you see Ozuna in that kind of spectrum? Do you think he's on the upswing, or? Well,
clearly we do, obviously, or we probably don't make that deal, but he also had that breakout year. And I think like when you ask people how you approach a club, he was the one hitter that we feared. Not to say that take away anything from those other 2, I mean, because clearly they impact players, but Ozuna was the one guy that we thought could beat you.
Do you think that established a baseline for where he's at, or a peak for where he's at this past year?
I think these types of questions are always hard to answer, but far be it from me to tell you you've reached your peak. Having the type of skill set he has, I think when you're looking at your sort of growth arch or trend line, he can continue to go up.
When you look at this team then after the addition of Ozuna, would you agree that the kind of the lineup is the known quantity that you have, and then you look at the rotation and you have a lot of optimism for it, but it has some new pieces. The bullpen, you have a lot of optimism for it, but it has some new pieces. The lineup's known, and the other ones are going to sort themselves out kind of on the go.
I guess we look at this in it with a little bit more clarity than that, in fairness. I feel like our rotation has a chance to be special. I certainly understand why the general public feels there's question marks. I mean, obviously, trading for someone like Miles, or signing someone like Miles Mikolas, who didn't pitch here. So I get it. People are like, well, what can he do? What will he do? But I feel like the depth that you're starting to see us collect at the minor league level, and having somebody like a Jack Flaherty, who may not even be in our rotation or even on this club because of that depth, is something that shows you the strength of it. Now, there's health issues, obviously, with someone like an Adam Wainwright, so I understand the question and I understand some of the fear, but we really feel like that's going to be one of our strengths as well. And then the one place I definitely agree with some uncertainty is the bullpen, because it's not defined by one single person. But as you and I have talked about off camera many times, this is about having people in there that we feel can do different roles, can pitch multiple innings, and it's really going to be how we ultimately manage it. And I think over the next 6 weeks, that'll become something that we then define.
Last year you had, and this plays into both the rotation and maybe the bench, but certainly the bullpen. Last year you had some I-55 action forced upon you, whether it was by injury or by performance. Do you think you could, in some ways, choose to have that this year to kind of flaunt the depth?
I've actually, discussed that, and you and I talked about that as well on the outfield portion of that, like for the 4th outfielder side. So that same strategy is hopefully going to be utilized for the pitching side as well. And really from a high level standpoint, we did use the I-55 corridor last year, but it was because it was always dealing with something.
Yeah.
Right? And it wasn't strategic in the sense of keeping someone fresh or optimizing someone that's peaking versus struggling. And I think having the ability to have a roster that has more flexibility built into it is going to be helpful.
Last question. When you look at how to finish games, and you have Gregerson coming in with some seasoning and some experience in that role, and also an openness to be used when the game is on the line in the 7th or 8th. He has his contract in a lot of ways that he's not going to be chasing the saves, so to speak. When you look at that, do you think that offers the flexibility to kind of attack when the game is on the line, and then you kind of learn from 11 and 13 and even 06 when a closer kind of emerges over the course of a season?
I agree with everything you just said, and I think that's an excellent strategy to take in. But unfortunately, I'm not the one that's making those decisions in terms of how to utilize that. But I think really when you're looking at the collection or the depth of what we have in that bullpen, how we see it on April 30th versus what it might look like on August 1st could be two different things. And I think as long as we take the approach that going with the hot hand, going with those right roles is something that's fluid, I think is a smart way to do it.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Thank you.